Hi everyone, this is Gary. Hope you all are doing well, and welcome to this week's live Path to Prosperity webinar. Welcome to all of you in either in the Investor Agent Training Program, the Flipping Program, the Rental Program, or the Property Management Program, or the Wholesale Program. There's 5 different programs out there. Also, welcome aboard to all the newer folks. So we should have a lot of folks from the great state of Georgia, and a lot of folks from the Nashville area, because I was just there last week. So, and possibly 1 or 2 folks from Indianapolis, because that's where I am this week. So in any case, welcome to all of you, veteran students and also brand new students. A couple things you notice, you are in default in mute mode by default, and that's because we can't all be talking at the same time. So what we do is just a little bit of housekeeping here, especially if you're new to the program, is we do use your question box down here to post questions. Okay, you'll see it down on the right hand side. Most of you have the panel on the right. That's how you post your questions. I will from time to time unmute you. Okay, and by the way, before we get into too much detail, let me type in my usual messenger just to make sure everybody's okay. So hang on 1 second. Can you see my screen and hear my voice? Okay, so if you guys could each answer that, I just want to make sure everybody's okay. Actually, I forgot to check the attendee list. Let's do that real quick. Always a blast from the past. Hey, Roger, how you doing, buddy? Hey, Roger, I'll be in New Jersey next month, man. So look at the schedule, myinvestmentservices.com/events, and you'll see where I'm going to be. I think Daryl's going to be at a couple of classes there, and probably Fassel. So, and let's see, who do we got? Beverly, Daryl, Cedric. Hey, Cedric, how you doing, buddy? Let's see, Dion, Ed Hazel. All right, good to see Ed. Mallory, I hope you're doing okay. Mallory, you're going to be able to make it to the mastermind in New York. It's going to be October 1st and 2nd. North of the city, but not quite to White Plains. Beautiful part of the country. We got a great little venue there. So let us know that. Mike Lucas, good call today. Let's see, Pam. Hey, Pam. Hopefully you're well rested from your Quebec vacation. Excuse me. Orlando, Tom, Vicky. Okay, great. Got lots of people on. Good to have you on board here. A little bit of housekeeping. Remember the next day after any of these webinars to get the email from Beverly. Look for the email. She does give you the recording of the webinar, but also she gives you instructions on things that are going on, changes to the platform, changes to the content, the webinar schedule, all kinds of stuff is in there. And you want to look at that to stay up to speed and up to date. I will be myself on vacation next week. So you notice there's no time slots available on Time Trade, but I'll be back obviously the week after. I'll be in New Jersey the entire month of August. So next week won't really be that accessible. And if you're really stuck on something, a real emergency, go ahead and try to text me, and I'll do the best I can. But we got a pretty active schedule next week out in California. So in any case, hi Siri, how you doing? Good to see you on board here. All right. Any case, I think that's pretty much it for housekeeping. We are going to have, oh, by the way, next week, Monique, who does our social media, she's going to be on doing a presentation for you all next week, which is going to be Monday night. So it looks like I'll be hosting that. I'll just be doing it from here. I just told you on my vacation here I am hosting a webinar, but it'll be 7 o'clock for most of you, of course, 4 o'clock Pacific time. But Monique's going to go over, the fan page or your business page and give you some really good tips and pointers. It'll be considered a working session, so you should be taking notes and actually trying to, for lack of better terms, flop back and forth into your Facebook page and implement some of what she's going to teach you. So that's going to be next week. And then the August schedule just came out. I saw Beverly put that out earlier in the week here. So in any case, I think that's it for housekeeping. Let's go ahead and get started here, guys. Backed by popular demand, I want to go into a little bit more commercial information. Actually, I was going to say some of you, quite frankly, a lot of you are starting to work on bigger and bigger transactions. I mean, some of the strategy calls are pretty interesting and pretty exciting. So we got into this commercial information a few weeks back. I thought, let's continue on with just some basics on valuation. It's a little bit different than the residential role, but it's not that complex. It's really not. You just got to follow along. And all of this, I think Beverly sent out a few weeks ago anyway. So everybody has this section on commercial. It is part of the 6th book. It's not published yet. Some of you already have it because we printed off some copies to go to the 3-day events. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about commercial tonight, which is a really good subject because a lot of you are getting involved with that, or you will be soon getting involved with not giant, $100 million transactions, but certainly things that are maybe 10 units rental or a small little mixed use property, garage, storage, things like that. It's important that you know these basic information so you can be more effective and be more articulate when you're speaking to folks about this. So let's just talk about the basic forms of value first. Then I'll get into how you actually determine the value. And of course, we'll talk about the basic cap rate, cash on cash return, but also some other formulas that you need to see. Real basic, simple stuff, nothing complex. I promise you, if you got through, 5th and 6th grade math, you're going to be fine. There's no calculus. There's not even any. Well, I was going to say no algebra. There is one formula that you'll see when I get to it. It's actually just basic division. Let's just put it that way. We'll say that one towards the end. So real quick, when it comes to commercial, there's a lot of different types of value. And just like with residential, you've got your market approach to valuation, which is what appraisers use to evaluate basic single family homes. When it comes to commercial, there's several different values. Aside from the appraisal, let's just talk about the different values for the different parties that are involved. You got the assessed value, which is for tax purposes, insurance value, of course, for the insurance company, loan value is what the lenders look at, investment value, which is what you and I and our clients look at, appraised value, of course, what the appraisers look at, and liquidation value is if a property had to be sold in distress, what would be that liquidation value? So let's just go over those real briefly, and then we'll get into some real bigger meat and potatoes here. So just like I mentioned, assessed value is what your tax assessor determines to be the value for tax purposes. It may or may not be the same as the real value of the property. It could be, but most cases it's actually not. In a lot of states I've been to, the assessed value is often lower than the actual, what I will call, quote unquote, street value, okay? Appraisal value, of course, is how the appraiser looks at it. Now, when it comes to commercial properties, you've got different types of appraisal. You've got market value appraisal, income approach to valuation, and the cost approach to evaluation. I'll get into those more detail later on. In most cases, commercial appraisers are looking mostly at the income approach to valuation. They always will show you the cost value, okay? But all of us are more interested in the income approach to valuation. Okay, insurance value, that's what the insurance guys look at it. And sometimes it's not always what you might think. It's not as easy or straightforward as you might think. So in other words, when it comes to insurance, there's different forms of insurance, basic form like A form, B form, C form, and they have different values depending on the type of insurance that you have. In other words, if you have like a basic or A form type of insurance, it's going to be based on the current market value, and they often will give themselves a little bit of cushion to be safe, okay? Maybe 20%. So if you have a disaster, a fire, they want to have some cushion in there so that they're not going to be the guy with the short straw, so to speak. Investment values, that is pretty straightforward. It's exactly what we associate with ourselves as agents and investors with the property. What's it worth to us as an investment, okay? The income approach, here's the 3 approaches to appraisals, professional commercial appraisers. All right, the income approach to valuation literally looks at the income of the property. Let's say it's a 10-unit building. Excuse me. They're going to make their valuation based on the gross and the net income on the property, okay? The cost approach is what it would actually take to rebuild the property. That's essentially what that would be. And the sales comparison approach is what we're all normally used to, which is what's used when appraisals appraise a single family home. They will provide a sales comparison approach. Other 10-unit buildings in the area, what they sold for, they will look at that. So you'll get 3 values on a commercial appraisal. But in most cases, we're all looking at the income approach to valuation. Okay. Liquidation value, just like I mentioned before, if there's a distress sale, foreclosure, a probate case where there's a decedent, situations like that, bankruptcy, foreclosure, that's liquidation value. What would the thing reasonably, if it had to be sold now, had to be sold for cash, what would that actually sell for? Loan value is what the lenders look at. They want to see a certain return on a property, to determine what that thing is worth to them as far as making a loan. So they're really interested in what's called the debt coverage ratio. How much of the income coming in from the property is going to be available to pay debt, to pay interest and principal on a mortgage payment? That's what they're looking at. Value and use, pretty much you have to look at the use of the property. So in other words, not every user of real estate needs to or wants to own the real estate. I think everybody should own real estate, but that's just my opinion. But it generally deals with how the property is being used and how its use is contributing to the profitability of the property. Okay, so that's the use value. All right, now we should probably talk about. Let's go into more detail about evaluations. Real quick though, I want to check for questions here before we move in. Now we're going to get into a final level of detail. It's definitely time to get out your pens and pencils and paper. Okay. Let's see. Okay, no questions. Everybody says they're okay. Hey, Daryl. Everybody seems to be okay on the audio video. Check your audio setting on your computer. Go to your settings and check that, because that may be the issue, may be there. So in any case, back to this. I'm going to skip through some of the front end stuff and go right to the meat and potatoes. There are different variables when it comes to value. Price of a property, that's obvious. The cost of a property, what it costs to build the property. So the price is what the asking price is for the property. Cost is what's the actual amount paid for the property, or what it would take to build a property, like I mentioned a moment ago. And the actual value is really in the open marketplace. How is this property being used? And is there a product being offered, service being offered? Is it a retail space? What's it generating in the way of rents? What are the lease amounts on the property? Essentially you're exchanging, goods and services for the use of the property. Okay. All right. So market value. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. A lot of this comes from the USAP, Uniform Standards of Appraisal Practices. It actually should be USPAP. Some of you, like me, probably taken some of those classes before. But really what it is, straight arm, flat out market value is two reasonably sane people, mature, sound mind, sound body, not in distress. It's an arm's length transaction. What a reasonable buyer and a reasonable seller agree to when it comes to price, okay? Without any undue stimulus. That's what we mean by arm's length transaction. So the assumptions are pretty much like I mentioned. The buyer and seller are obviously motivated. They wouldn't be doing this. They're sound mind. They're well informed. They're acting in their own best interest. They understand the terms as far as cash and debt and all that kind of stuff. And also what we call highest and best use. All this is based on the highest and best use of the property. Some properties, believe it or not, are not being used according to their highest and best use. So what that represents to us investors is opportunity. If something is undervalued because it's not currently being utilized at its highest and best value, highest and best use, we can certainly change that, okay? So in any case, highest and best use, here you go. Most probable use of the land and approved property that is legally possible, physically possible, and financially feasible. And it's a, appropriately supportable from the market, which results in maximum profitability, excuse me. Creativity is obviously vital in this. In other words, if we're going to take a property and change its use, you've got to be pretty creative. That sounds obvious, but look at the what's possible legally, physically, financially. Look at all those different factors. For example, I've had buildings where they were mixed use, and I took the commercial use, the units used for commercial purposes, and converted them to residential use. Okay, because I was going to make more money that way. I had other properties where I was able to take space, vacant space, storage space, and convert them into rentable units by adding plumbing, electrical, bathroom, and kitchen facilities, and all that. So I was able to change the use of the property to create a better, highest, and best use, and therefore more profit, more profitability, and made the properties more valuable. So in any case, I don't want to get into a lot of this, the details here, because it talks about zoning and all that kind of stuff. A lot of this is common sense, but the reality is we're assuming that you have proper zoning, proper occupancy, and all those things. Like for when I added units, built additional rentable units in some of my properties, I went through the proper channels. I got the occupancy permits, the building permits, did everything legally that I was supposed to, and as a result, I had no issues. And when I was selling the property, there were no issues that showed up there either. Okay. In any case, that's essentially what that section is telling us there. So let's go ahead and jump into how appraisals do these three basic forms of appraisals. Okay. Sales comparison is obviously the easiest one to understand because we all already do that. Most of us come from the residential world, and all they're really doing is looking at comparable sales in the area. Other properties that are like the property we're selling, similar characteristics, similar size, similar amenities, and look at what they sold for. As long as they sold within a reasonable time frame, like recent history within the last 30, 60, 90 days, we're okay. Generally, appraisers do not like to go out past that. They will go out a year. On bigger commercial properties, they sometimes have to go back further, but more importantly, they'll go out further geographically to find other areas, other comparable properties in other areas. Okay, and then they'll make adjustments based on differences in amenities. We're all kind of familiar with that basic appraisal approach. And by the way, kind of a misnomer a lot of people have is they don't really, I know it says it here, but appraisers really don't take the average of comparables. Excuse me, I just kind of, let me go back here. I just lost my place. They really don't take the average of the comparable values. Really what they're doing is they're taking the one that's the closest to the subject property and making adjustments, okay? So in any case, that's sales comparison approach. Cost approach is literally what would it cost to reproduce this property today? And that's an important concept because if you're buying a building that was built 50 years ago and you built a comparable property today, I promise you, I don't care what you do to the old property, it's not going to be worth as much based on the cost approach as it is to build a brand new property. That's a general rule of thumb. But nonetheless, it's one of the things they looked at. So if you had a complete disaster, what would it cost to rebuild the property? And that's really what you're looking at. And there's a lot more factors involved, like depreciation. An older building is going to be depreciated. In other words, certain components of the building have aged, and they're not really worth what they were when the building was first built. So we need to figure out, well, what is the current value, depreciated value of a heating system or a plumbing system, and then also what is the cost of rebuilding it new. Okay, so cost approach. For example, and by the way, everything's taken into consideration, land and everything else. So if you got a existing building appraisal for $1.5 million, the cost of the building is usually the most expensive thing. So that's going to be, let's say $1 million. what they depreciated maybe is worth 350,000. Okay, that's what's depreciated. The land may be worth 700,000. If you add all those things up, you've got essentially a $1.5 million property, right? The cost total per cost approach. So you have to factor all those things in, and that's what appraisers do. Now, we're going to get into something a little more complex here. Don't let this intimidate you. All it's saying is, if you want to determine the value of the property, you divide the income by the cap rate. Okay. If you want to determine the cap rate, you would divide the income by the value. Okay. So income divided by value gives you cap rate. This is what you paid for the property. This is what the net operating income is. NOI is income minus expenses, rents minus expenses, not including debt service. That's later on. Right now, we're just looking at NOI, net operating income, divided by what the building is worth, what you paid for it in total, will give you your cap rate. So you could also take, again, the income approach, net operating income divided by the cap rate, and that will give you the value. So in any case, I just want to give you that basic piece there. So let's go ahead and move on here and go through some examples. So you can use how do I want to say this? We can't determine, we can't make something have a certain cap rate. I mean, if you own a property, you can modify a building and change the value and all that. But what I'm getting at is, assuming you're buying a property outright, you can't force a particular cap rate. The cap rate is what is the area is providing. So buildings in an area might have a certain cap rate. So what I'm getting at is, you can look at cap rates for other properties around the area to determine what would reasonably be a cap rate for your subject property. Okay, so we kind of already talked about that. I mean, here's the formula again, but I think they give us some examples here. So let's just go see here. All right, here's a blended cap rate. So what they're doing is, they're taking cap rates for 4 different properties: 10%, 9%, 9.6%, and 9% again. If you average those out, it's 9.4%. So how do we use this? Well, here's how we use it. The cap rate the appraiser would use then is 9.4%. So if you had a property generating $20,000 in net operating income, all right, you would take the $20,000 divided by the cap rate. Remember, we talked about that, and the resulting figure, which is the value, is $212,766. So let's say let's say somebody's advertising a property for $212,000, and they don't give you the income for the property, but you know that the prevailing cap rate is 9.4%. Well, you could multiply 9.4% or divide that by the 212,000. You'll end up with a net operating income of 20,000. What I'm getting at is, you can figure out as long as you have 2 of those variables, you can always determine the third variable just by using simple division. That's the whole point of this whole exercise here. So in any case, when there's no comparables, here's what appraisers do. Let's say you're way out in the middle of nowhere, Montana. Okay, we always seem to pick on Montana because it's out in the middle of nowhere. And there's a commercial space, and it's simply almost impossible to find comparables or find other properties. What they do is, they look at what if the lender's making a loan of 75%, and the investor's putting down 25%, they'll look at the cap rate or the yield that the banker wants, and they look at the yield or the return that the investor wants. And if you do the math on that, 75%, in other words, the lender lends 75% loan to value, the loan's going to be 75% of the purchase price, and they want a 10% return. You multiply that by 10%, and you get 0.0750. Oops, excuse me there. Same thing for the investor. Investor wants to get 15% return on their down payment, what we call the cash on cash return, which we'll talk about very shortly here. So 25% that they're putting down times 15% gives you 0.0375. If you add those two up, if you blend those two, if you blend them, you come up with 11% cap rate. That's the cap rate that this property needs to yield in order to satisfy the lender and the investor, the person putting the money down and the person loaning the money. So if net operating income is 20,000 bucks in our example, you apply an 11% cap rate to that, right? 20,000 divided by 11 gives you $181,818. Okay, so that's what that property comes out to. It's not 220,000, whatever the example was. Excuse me. Yeah, 212. If you look at the net operating income to apply that cap rate, then that's what they would reasonably purchase the property for, 181.8. In other words, the investor will put down 25% of 181,000, and the lender would loan 75% of the 181,000. And then if the seller is agreeable to that, you've got yourself a deal. Okay. So in any case, just here's what we're talking about here is the position. Every person is going to have their own agenda. The lender's got a certain agenda. If the property they believe is worth 181, they'll loan 75% of that, which is 136. If they want a 10% return, then they should be getting 13,635 on the annual payments, on the annual debt service that the investor is going to pay the bank on that loan. Okay, the investor is putting down 25%. Okay, so 25% of 181 is 45,000. So the investor puts down 45 grand. They want a 15% yield on that, what we call cash on cash return. So they should be bringing in the net to the investor after debt service and other expenses should be 6,800. So you take your 20,000 net operating income, subtract that debt service for the bank. Okay, hang on one second. Let's screw back up here real quick. Which is 13,635. You'll see you end up with 6,363. Not quite the 6,800 that the investor wants, but you know what? Probably close enough. In other words, I would take 6,300 annually on 45,000. That's a no-brainer. That's probably a 12, 13, 14% return. So in any case, if we look at this example, let's say the sale price is going to be 200,000. 75% loan to value is 150,000. 10% yields 15,000 for the lender, right, on that loan. The investor puts down now 50,000. 15% return on the 50,000 is 7,500. So if you subtract from the net operating income the debt service for the lender, 15,000, and you see the cash return for the investor is only 5,000. Well, that's now a pretty big difference. There's a big difference between 5,000 and 7,500, right? Well, I don't know that I would do that deal. So in any case, this is some of the stuff you can play with when you have these formulas and you're working with commercial properties and commercial investors. Not that complex, just a step above what we've already been working on throughout your program. In any case, what I want to do here is kind of jump ahead and go to different ways that lenders and appraisers and investors look at property. They do look at cost per square foot, which is just like it says, you take the total cost of the property divided by the total square feet of the property and you get cost per foot. There are prevailing rates for cost per square foot for industrial space, for retail space, for office space, storage space, things like that. But the math is so simple. I don't think we need to spend time on this. I mean, in other words, a $900,000 asking price for a property on a 10,000 square foot property means it's $90 per square foot. So in any case, the investor just has to determine, is that what they're willing to pay for a property? It's just another view of the property. All right. Now, let's talk about what we're all really interested in, which is cash flow, right? And we'll talk about gross rent multiplier, cash on cash return, things like that. But let's see if we have any questions here. Let's see, Daryl's back on. Okay, good, Daryl, I'm glad. Hey, Daryl, this is, I think you have this, Daryl, all this stuff. If you don't have all this, let me know. I'll make sure we get this sent to you, because I know you're jumping into commercial now, actually made the move over to commercial. So kudos to you. Okay, here's how we really determine income on a property. and the value of a property. It's all based on income. So we take the total potential income for a property, we subtract the vacancy right off the bat. It's going to be a perceived value. It's usually a percentage that we translate into hard dollars. So in other words, if vacancy we project is 5%, and we've got $100,000 projected rents coming in for the year, then we would subtract 5,000, in other words, 5% of 100, to account for the vacancy. And then we have what's called the effective rental income, all right here. And then we add in other income. Well, this is going to be laundry. Maybe you've got an apartment building that has laundry and you have storage in there, and you rent the storage bins out separately, which you definitely should do. That's what I do. Then you have what's called the GOI, gross operating income. Okay. Then you subtract your expenses, taxes, insurance, maintenance and repairs, water, sewage, garbage, tax preparation, advertising, anything, all kinds of stuff, office supplies, and all that goes in there. Payroll, right? All of that gets subtracted. You end up with what's called a net operating income, NOI, all right? That's before debt service. Well, here's the difference. When we do net out the debt service, in other words, your principal and interest portion of a mortgage payment, you end up with what we call cash flow before taxes. That's your actual cash flow. Later on, we're going to use that actual cash flow, cash in our pockets, which is income less expenses, less debt service is your actual cash return. We'll use that later on to determine the cash on cash return. All right, but before we do though, let's look at the gross rent multiplier. A lot of people are confused by this. It's actually really simple. Take the cost of the property, divide it by the total rental income, what we believe is the potential or perceived rents for the property. So in other words, if we have a $100,000 property, and then we believe it's going to give us gross rents of $10,000, well, the gross rent multiplier is then 10%. In other words, 10,000 rental income gross is 1/10 of the total price of the property. Now, I will tell you, this is the Gary Wilson formula for success. Depending on the area, I've learned over the last 32 years that I need to have on average basically like a 16.5% GRM. It could be lower in some areas, could be higher in other areas. Could be based on the age of the property. Okay, but what I'm getting at is if I have $100,000 property, all right, I need a minimum of 16,500 coming in, okay, on the property on rents for me to be able to make money on that property. Be honest with you, I actually I had my own formula. Let me tell you what my formula was. I didn't want to do that on an annual basis. I wanted to do it on a monthly basis. And what I determined was on a monthly basis, I need to see 1.65 of the total purchase of the property coming back to me in gross rent. So in other words, if I paid $100,000 for a property, I wanted to see $1,650 coming in every single month. Gross, that's my gross monthly rent multiplier. I actually aimed for 2,000, 20%, or excuse me, 2%. In other words, if I bought the $100,000 property, I wanted 2,000 coming in every single month. That's what I wanted. I didn't always hit that, but that was the home run. Getting on base is 1.65, 1,650. So that's the monthly gross rent multiplier. Most cases we're dealing with on an annual basis. Okay, I just want to explain that. So, in any case, if you look at this example down here, $900,000 property, 100,000 in rents coming in every year. Do the division on that, you end up with a gross rent multiplier of 9. Okay. On an annual basis, that's okay. I definitely want higher than that. But basically what you're saying is 9 times gross is how that's the phrase, the terminology they usually use for that. So, in any case, enough of that. Let's go do the basic cap rate, and then we'll take a quick breather and go into the cash on cash return. So let me go back to the questions here because I saw some people typing things in. Okay, Daryl says he has this documentation. Okay, good. All right, so this is from Fassel. Hey, Fassel. All right, Fassel is asking, all right, I just sent an email of a deal I am working on and putting an offer on for a client on Friday for $350. Can you see if the numbers make sense? And it is a commercial deal. Oops, excuse me. Mixed use, doctor office, first floor, 3 apartment units on second floor and rear. Hey, Fassel, is that, you said you sent an email. Deal, I just sent an email. Fassel, does the email have the details? Because I can bring it up on the computer here. We can break that thing down right here on the computer. Just let me know if it has the details enough for us to look at income expense, and we'll go through. We'll use the rental property evaluator, something like that. Okay, but let me get through the questions here first. See, Mike. Okay, hey, Mike Lucas. All right, just spoke to you yesterday. Hi, Gary. If you could please send this to me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Yeah, what I'll do, Mike, is I think Beverly sent this out the last time I did commercial, which was about a month ago. But look in your emails from Beverly, the one that says last night's webinar, and you'll see a link in there. It's not like an attachment. It has the paperclip symbol inside the email, but it's actually a download link. It's actually a link for download. So look for that. You should have it. If not, Beverly listens to these. She'll send it back out again. So Fassel says the properties on Excel spreadsheet. So let's go through this next section here, Fassel, and then we'll bring your property up on the computer and we'll let everybody take a look at it and get some feedback from other people like Mike. Mike does multi-units. You know, of course, Daryl's involved with that. Several people from around the country. You'll have several dozen eyes on your property, on your deal. So real quick, back to this. All right, cap rate. We've already went over this earlier. We got all the way down to cash flow before taxes. So potential rent minus vacancy gives you effective rent, plus your other income, laundry, storage, whatever, gives you gross income, minus operating expenses gives you your net operating income, and minus your debt service gives you your cash flow. Okay, so let's jump on down here and see if, well, there's the cap rate. Obviously, it's net operating income divided by purchase price. Just always remember that. That's your cap rate. Straight and simple. NOI divided by the purchase price of the property. All right. And I want to kind of go through a little bit faster, guys, because I want to get Fassel's property up on the computer. But for example, a $90,000 net operating income on a $900,000 property gives you a value of basically cap rate of 10%. Take 90,000 divided by 900,000, you get 10%. That's the example they give us. In any case, I believe, if I remember correctly, cash on cash return is not too far away, Fassel. So we'll get to that. There it is. All right. Cash on cash return. So here's the difference. Two things. Number one is that you take the cash flow before taxes. So you're taking your cash flow after expenses and also after your debt service. So you take your net operating income, subtract your debt service, principal and interest loan payments. That gives you your cash flow, cash in pocket before taxes. You haven't paid taxes yet. And you divide that by the actual initial investment into the property. How much money did you put into the property, not what you purchased it for. So let's say you bought a property for $100,000 and you put $25,000 into it. Down payment, maybe $20,000 and the $5,000 for new appliances. Essentially, you're putting in $25,000. You would divide your cash flow before taxes by the $25,000, and that'll give you your cash on cash return. Okay, so there it is right there. We get all the way down to the cash flow before taxes. Let's see the example they give us. Cash on cash return. All right, let's see here. So assume $800,000 property, $80,000 NOI. Purchase was $600,000 loan, which means they put $200,000 down on the property. Further assume the payments on a loan are $66,000 a year. Cash flow the investor receives after all payments is $14,000. All right. So here's what we do. We take the cash flow before taxes, $14,000, divided into the $200,000 down payment, which is either the purchase price minus the loan amount, $200,000, You can see they got a 7% cash on cash return. Now, everybody always asks, what do I look for in cash on cash return? I would never go for 7%, I can tell you that. I usually shoot for a minimum 20% cash on cash return. Would I take 10%? I might if I was in a place like San Francisco or Vancouver, one of the areas where prices are going up rapidly. Where I live part-time out of London, Ontario, about 2 hours west of Toronto. Toronto is sort of kind of leveled off, but 2 hours to the west, guys, the values are going up like, I mean, every time I go home, it's like the prices are going up even further. It's just amazing. So up there, people might take 7% cash on cash return. I generally want, if I'm going to put down $100,000 on a property that's worth $500,000, I want to get $20,000 in cash flow after all expenses and debt service at the end of the year. And that's not that hard to do, quite frankly. That's everybody. I think everybody should have that goal. But everybody's different, So by the way, the lower the cap rate, generally the better the appreciation of the property. And same thing is sort of true for cash on cash return. It's just you can manipulate cash on cash return by putting down more money or putting down less money. But what I'm getting at is if I'm in an area like San Francisco, I might take a 10% cash on cash return, knowing that the appreciation is far greater than most other parts of the country. Okay. So in any case, that's cash on cash return. I don't know that we want to get into this next section. Let's do this. Let's go to Faisal's email. So Faisal, hang on just one second, brother. We'll bring up your email. And there it is. So let's go down here. Here's my bar. Okay. Give me just a second to get this up here. It's not going to slide back over. Okay, here we go. 426 Union and Patterson. Hot diggity dog. All right, so rent roll. So here we got rent roll. So Faisal, what you're telling me is there's residential 1, so that's unit suite unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not sure why 3 is there again. I guess they're getting 47,600. I'm sorry, 47,760 a year in rents. So let's look at the P&L. Okay. All right. Gross income coming in. Vacancy 5%. By the way, guys, everybody always uses 5% vacancy. Actually, I'll be the first to tell you it's not 5%. It's actually been hovering around 2 to 3%, depending on where you are in the country. 2% or less in bigger cities like Toronto. Some of the outlying areas will be more like 3%, but I don't know any area that's still sitting around 5%. That's old. It's just an old industry standard. Everybody just uses 5%. Okay, so let's look at some numbers here. We got taxes, 13,000. By the way, Faisal, what's the? I don't see the list price or ask price for the property. Oh, here's some stuff down here. Let's go through this first. All right, taxes 13,000, insurance 2,250, water, sewage, landscaping 2,500. Hey, by the way, Faisal, I would always break out something like landscaping separate from water and sewer. Water and sewer are actually lienable items, so I'd always have them in their own category, just for different purposes, different reasons. But I want to isolate them because later on, if somebody, let's say, doesn't pay the water or sewage, or whatever the case is, that lien can be placed on the property for those utilities. Okay, maintenance and repairs, 300 a unit on an annual basis. I could go for that if it's a newer, nicer property. Repairs and maintenance commercials, it must be, oh, you said mixed use, that's right. They put blank there. Replacement allowance, I'm not exactly sure what that pertains to, Faisal. Maybe they have, they're putting aside 2% of their receipts to cover, fires and vandalism, things like that. I don't know. Or management 5%, I think that's a little low, but that might be okay for the area. Miscellaneous, it's always good to put some miscellaneous stuff in there. So you got total expenses 22,460. So you got a net operating income of 22,726. Debt service 4.5%, sorry, 4.75 for 30 years at 18,000. Gives you a debt coverage ratio of 1.24. In other words, looks like there's enough cash flow coming in from the property and enough net operating income to satisfy the debt service. And clearly there is. You got an NOI of 22, debt service 18, but there's not much breathing room there. Some banks want to make this like 1.25. Some banks want to make it 1.75. But right now, you're pretty close to 1.25. Any case, what that means is that the net operating income should be 1.25 of your debt service. That's what that is, okay? Over here, this is really, I love this calculator because it gives you the percentage that each category has. In other words, taxes is 34% of your expenses. Insurance is 15%. Your total expenses are basically 70%. That's before debt service. I mean, to me, Fassel, man, that would be high, dude. You know, your debt service is 31%. That's right. Your NOI, by contrast, is 31%. I generally like to see 50% because I've still got to pay my debt service, right? So, any case, let's see if I can go down to the bottom here. Cap rate 5%. Then it's got 6%, 7%. I'm not sure. It doesn't really line up with these columns up here. In any case, oh, they're giving you at different cap rates what the value of the property is. I got you. So remember I said earlier, the lower the cap rate, the more valuable the building. You see it right here. Lower cap rate, 5%, 454,000 is what the value would be. 6% cap rate, it would be 378. 7% cap rate will be 324. So somewhere in there is the magic number. Now, the thing is, you have to look at what the cap rate is for the area. What would this type of property generate historically as far as the cap rate goes in that area? Because you really can't dictate that. It's just the market tells you what that is. And then I would tell you what the price should be for the property. It may be 6%, in which case the building will be worth about 380, right? Any case, in order for the bank to underwrite this, this is the loan to value ratio. Now, banks generally are not going to go above 70% on a commercial property. They might go to 80. They very rarely would never go to 98. I've seen them go to 90 before, even 95% in different economies. But the fact is, they're probably playing it a little bit closer to the vest right now, okay? So, all right, let me go. This is the amortization schedule, and it's just going to show us the breakdown of the payments. So assuming a loan balance of beginning 318, interest on that and principal amount, or sorry, principal and interest is combined 1875, principal is 300, interest 1577. Of course, that's going to change every single month. So let's see, this is a 360-year base, calculated 365. What is the average rate? Term is 30 years. Oh, okay, so here, over here, I like, see, Fassel like this. This is why I like, if you look at this term with the associated amortization, look at the 10-year term with the 15-year amortization. Look at the rate there, 4.38. I would gladly pay 4.38 for a 15-year amortization right now on a 10-year term. I would love to do that. I'm not, you know, I would be okay with the 5-year term, 25-year amortization. It's just that what happens is you're going to have a much lower payment, and every 5 years it's going to reprice, and it's going to do that 5 times. Okay. So in any case, let me go back to the question boxes. I want to make sure. Let's see. So Fassel, let me go. All right, it's on a spreadsheet. Fassel's saying, okay, 426 just reduced to 424.9. So let's go back here. All right, so they're looking at essentially maybe a 5.25, 5.5% cap rate. So is this something, Fassel, one of your clients is making an offer on? Is it currently, are you literally got to write an offer on this? Is that the case? Or let me know what the status is of this. I've never invested in Patterson. I kind of know the area. I mean, you know it much better than I do. Well, too bad this isn't going on next month, because actually we'll be there. I'll actually be in your market center. Any case, but as far as this goes, if your investor is satisfied with these numbers, go ahead and make an offer, but always use the due diligence clause we give you, so that you're going to ask for 3 years rent roll, 3 years of Schedule E on the tax returns, 3 years of P&L, profit loss, and also ask for any contracts on the property, vendor contracts like for pest control, for snow removal, for lawn care, laundry, security. You want to get any and all contracts that are for the property, because some of them have a clause in there that says this contract survives transfer of ownership. In other words, the new owner inherits the contract, and if the contract is breached, they can come after the new owner. They actually place a lien on the property. They can place a lien on the property. So you want to make sure you look at all the contracts and see what your buyer is going to be agreeing to. All right. And the seller has to disclose those to you. They have to provide those to you, but you got to ask for them, right? Any case, let's see if there's any more questions here. Yes, we're going to put in a letter of intent tomorrow and drop letter of intent Friday or Saturday. We are looking to put an offer at 350. So if you're going to do just a letter of intent, Fassel, it's actually better to make an actual offer. You'll have a lot more favorable response if you make an offer. But on a 350K offer on that property, ask your buyer if they can put up a larger earnest money deposit, because that'll sweeten the pot. With the way the market is right now, if you're going to go in a little bit lower than like that, quite frankly, the seller, if they get other offers, they're likely to kind of look at the other offers first. But if you got a higher earnest money deposit, it means your buyer's willing to risk more. They often will still consider your offer, even though it may be lower than the offer than the other ones. Also, make sure you guys qualified, proof of funding, proof of funds, things like that. Let's see, 5% cap rate is usually break-even cash flow. That's from Ed Hazel. Ed Hazel's down around Philly, Fassel. He's been doing this for quite a while too. All right, Fassel. All right, he was going to put 25% check up front. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. See right there, if he's putting up 25% at 350, that's 75. That's 87,500. See, that says something to a seller. That says your guy is serious, and he can come to the racehorse with horses in his trailer already. So I would go for that then, and that's a pretty sweet payday for you. So congratulations on that. Okay, guys, it's about 5 till. It doesn't make sense to start another subject, and we actually got through the bulk of what I wanted to get through tonight. And thanks to Fassel, we got an actual property to look at to use it as an example. So thanks for doing that, Fassel. I appreciate that. For next week, guys, just be ready on the 23rd. Again, we're going to have Monique on to talk to you about how to use Facebook. It's going to be an instructional class again. Hands-on. She's going to go through some demonstrations, and my recommendation would be ready on your computer to implement some of what she's going to teach you. Okay. So, in any case, let me just check one more time for questions. Thank you, everyone, for your input. So, everybody, Fassel's saying thank you, and Fassel, everybody's saying thank you. And Fassel, hope you're recuperating successfully. All our prayers are with you, brother. And if anybody needs me on an emergency basis, you know how to get a hold of me. Otherwise, I'll be on vacation. It's the first time I will have been home for any length of time since the holidays, when I've been going back on the weekends. But so this is kind of I only do this like twice a year. So in any case, so you guys have a wonderful rest of the week. God bless you and your families, and we will see you next week. Okay, take care, guys. Bye-bye.